Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our Business Solutions webinar. Today we're going to be talking about improving payment efficiency and security. Both Michelle Jones and myself will be presenting today, and we really look forward to spending the next few minutes with you going through some of the exciting changes within Nextech, as well as what you should really be considering with respect to efficiencies and security. One of the things that we often think about in our practices is how do we increase or improve our efficiencies? We look at all different facets of our practices, but do we really ever hone in just on efficiencies and payments? Closely looking at the payment processing, and then more importantly, the security of how you're managing that within your practice. Are you trying to avoid fraud? Are you looking at ways to improve what you're doing for your patients? Let's face it, we want to be more patient-centric. We want to find ways to really make sure that we're doing everything behind the scenes to cut down on those additional clicks and those additional processes so that we can really show a lot of attention to our patients. Patients have a lot of choices these days. So let's just talk about a new way to really think about that with payments. So today we're going to think about a couple of different things. We're going to look at what has the industry done to really drive this? What are the changes? Where do we see technology really moving us forward? Then we're going to look at internally, how do we collect money faster? What are things that we can do to really control that cadence, as well as reduce our AR, reduce risk of loss. But of course, we want to make sure that we're understanding the data and use that data to, of course, understand opportunity as well as risk. And then finally, we're going to spend a few minutes just looking at fraud. I don't know, can't see your hands, but I've been in many practices, as has Michelle, where we have unfortunately helped physicians discover with optimization, we have found fraud. And it's a terrible place to be. It's awful. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars in most cases that we've experienced. But there are things that you can do to control this, to cut down on it, to really protect yourself. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So let's get started. We're going to kick it off with key industry drivers, and I'm going to pass it over to Michelle.
Thank you, Robin. So in this section, we're going to talk, as she said, key industry drivers and what those are: increased payment responsibility, price transparency, and advances in technology. So let's start with the increased patient responsibility. Today, our patients are faced with increased deductibles, payment plans that they can't meet, sticker shock when they get the statements, not realizing how much their services were going to be and how much they're going to have to pay and how are they going to pay that. And also, a lot of our practices don't seek outside collections anymore, which in turn is creating our staff to work even harder to chase the money after the visit or procedure has even happened. So what is price transparency? Effective January 1st of this year, CMS has started requiring that all hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers have price transparency for their patients, which means that they are publishing their standard fees and allowing the patients to shop for their services and kind of guide them what they're going to be expecting to pay before they have their first appointment. I know for me, my insurance has the same thing. I can look at my provider, kind of put in the services on the website, and it kind of gives me a gauge of what my expectations of the fees are going to be, so I can kind of have that preset determination in my head before I'm even seeing of what my cost might be. And so it takes away that sticker shock. This also is going to allow the patients to have that ability to shop for services, to really think about the financial situation before they have their appointment and be realistic with their expectations of the planned care. A lot of states are starting to show and enforce these with private practices. They haven't, it's not a nationwide thing at this time. So how can we deploy successful price transparency? So understanding the state laws, like I just mentioned, a lot of them we're starting to see are mandating this for physicians' offices, not all of them. But the biggest thing is having what we call like a patient liaison, maybe a patient coordinator, surgical coordinator, those type people are going to really start being more and more important and relevant in the practices. They're key to initiate the conversation with the patient, sometimes even from the initial scheduling of the appointment. This will increase your patient experience, but also reduce the AR that we're trying to chase after the visit has happened. So they can introduce the practice, talk with the patient, discuss those fees, and actually set out a realistic payment plan with the patient even before any planned procedures would take place. So with all of this, there are so many great technological advances that have happened in lieu of COVID and even prior, that a lot of options for our patients to really stay on top of paying their payments, their balances, and sometimes even their copay. I know with a lot of the portals, you have a lot of online bill pay options. You also have your mobile payments, and there's a lot of options of paying their copay and even their balance before they're seen. So this technological advance is really giving them many, many options to supersede having to chase that money and also meeting the demands of their payment plans or payments in full. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robin where she can get in more detail about all of this.
Thanks, Michelle. So let's talk about our internal processes. How do we collect money faster? It's that old thing, show me the money. So let's get it going by thinking about how do we collect early? Early. We want to be efficient. We want to get it on time. We don't want to have to chase the money afterwards, because once it gets to the stage of going to collections, I often find physicians really are hesitant to do that. They like the patient, they don't want him to be upset, and they really don't want those negative reviews out there on the internet. So we really want to focus on how do we tactfully and gently, so to speak, try to collect payments early but efficiently. And one of those ways is we're going to look at integrated payment solutions. It's an obvious choice. It's not uncommon. It's something that many of you probably already use. We're just going to talk about it in a different sense today. And then obviously, one of my favorite topics is always going to be data. So with that, let's spend a little bit of time about understanding the when we collect payments. So yes, there's all different types of payments, cash, check, charge, care credit, loyalty certificates, all of those things are payment types. But with respect to patient balance, when should we be collecting that money? And generally, I like to think about, let's start before the patient even walks in the door. Avoid those uncomfortable situations where the patient is at check-in and they're a little bit hesitant or uncomfortable with the conversation. Technology today gives us that opportunity with integrated payment processing to actually make things visible to the patient. So maybe at the time of clicking that button that says confirmed, it also shows them whatever their balance might be so that they can go ahead and click pay my bill. You can use this not just for balances. Think about it as, making them aware of their copays, going back to that price transparency there. Deposits, maybe for a procedure, a surgery, deductibles. In the elective market, we use this a lot with respect to collecting prepayments. So think about how this can be something that you position in your practice to be more efficient and proactive at getting the money before the patient comes in the door. Well, then of course we want to collect when they come in. And so that's one of the more common places. Most workflows I see are the copays are collected at check-in. Now, copays are generally not the problem. Balances are. It becomes an uncomfortable conversation sometimes. Patients may not have been aware of it. They're hesitant to talk about it. Maybe they're a little bit confused. Let's face it. Patients just do not understand their EOBs. The conversations that you hear billers have with patients commonly wrap around, they don't understand why they got a statement, why they've got a bill, why insurance didn't pay everything. And so this helps, when you're collecting a check-in, get ahead of some of that, but you don't want to have those uncomfortable situations at check-in. We want to mitigate that. And we really want to have a good patient-centric experience. So we want to really make it efficient. So efficiency comes into play with, do I have a credit card device and I have to also key it into my computer system? So that's two processes. Then I've even seen practices where they still don't hand or print receipts, they'll handwrite receipts, which Seems a little archaic, but okay, so they still do it. But now I've set myself up for user error. I've set myself up so at the end of the day, I may have a harder time balancing. So these are things that we really want to focus on reducing the clicks, reducing the different areas that I can open up for inefficiencies. You know, I talk about this a lot with practices. We want a patient-centric experience. We want to drive those patients to come in and feel like that first face AC is friendly and that person's looking up at them and they're engaging with them. Well, if my front desk staff member is so involved in trying to collect money, trying to mark the patient in, trying to put them in the room manager, trying to make sure all the paperwork's in place, try to key it into the computer system. Oh, and then, by the way, make sure you get those consents or those patient agreements signed. And this is generally my most junior staff member, but look at the responsibility that they had, and they don't even get to hide behind a door. So we want to look at every possible way that we can increase efficiencies. And payments is definitely something you want to look at. We often find that this is also where we lose money and there's fraudulent activity that can happen here. So we want to look at how we secure that as well. Statements. So we've gotten through the entire process of seeing the patient. Now we're at the other side of it. How do we make statements more efficient? Yes, there's a lot of ways to do this with online statements, click to pay, etc. But using your patient portal so that it's a secure experience for the patient. Again, using your portal also is going to help you not only push that statement or that information out to them, but also when the money comes back in, that patient payment comes back in, we want to also cut down on the back end office experience as well. So those days of getting all those paper checks in the mail, you'd send out statements once a month, and then we would expect all those hundreds of checks coming in, we hope. And then you sit there for hours posting patient payments. Again, inefficient. There's so many ways that we can cut down on this these days. And so imagine if I'm, using the portal to collect that balance afterwards, the patient keys in their payment, what if it automatically applied to the oldest balance? Wouldn't that be interesting? Wouldn't that be great? These are the things you look for in efficiencies. So let's take it a step further. Let's eliminate statements altogether. Why not actually just collect as soon as insurance adjudicates? So if you consider this option, you've eliminated an entire process of sending out statements, or at least reducing that footprint. But at the same time, you're going to set yourself up to get that money in faster. You're going to get the revenue in faster. And you're not going to have that conversation that you're having with the patient. You're not going to have to chase after the patient. It's not going to turn into, well, I lost the statement, or I never got it in the mail, or maybe your statements aren't going out efficiently and they're not going out as often as they should. This just lets you get it out in front of it sooner so that you're getting the revenue in faster. Practices that will do this will sometimes actually put a little signage at checkout that says, show me how I can reduce my balance by 5%. Doesn't seem like much, but if you go back to these high deductibles, patients consider that to be significant these days. And so there are states that you really can't do discounting, so to speak, but prompt pay is usually accepted. And oftentimes patients immediately sign up for it. So getting that credit card and storing it securely is going to be important to you. You don't want to write down the credit card numbers and tuck it away into the notes. This is where you want to really be secure. So again, a lot of different ways in different stages of the patient journey where we can look at how we can collect payments faster and safely. So with integrated payments, which of course supports all of this, integrated means that it's one and done, so to speak. I'm going to avoid all of those extra steps. The system, your software system completely integrates with the payments, meaning that I'm on my computer screen and I've checked my patient in, and then I'm going to turn around and go ahead and collect that copay by just keying in whatever information right there into the system or right into the keypad that's right there. And then the payment's processed immediately. No more do I have to worry about at the end of the day that, wait a minute, I put the payment in the system, but I forgot to process a credit card. And oh, by the way, I don't have the credit card. So now I've got to call the patient. So that's uncomfortable. And these are just areas where revenue gets lost. So we want to kind of get ahead of it. So integration is going to be your number one friend. You want to really integrate it. So this also is going to help you where you get faster access to payment history. You're going to have, of course, like I said, much easier time balancing at the end of the day. And When it's integrated, one of the key takeaways is you're going to reduce that risk of loss, theft, embezzlement. Those are areas where Michelle's going to tell you some things in a little while that are real hair raisers on this one. So we want to implement a ubiquitous, safe, faster electronic solution. So with that, let's talk a little bit about Nextech Payments. It's exciting. You know, it's always fun to get the new toys. And so Nextech Payments is an exciting new place for our company. We've now taken the option of integrated and moved it internally. So now, not only are you getting the integrated option, but you're getting the one stop. Nextech's going to help you do it all. So we want to be not just a software solution, but a business solution. And this is just another way of us moving in that direction. We want to keep our clients, our practices efficient and safe. And so this is lending itself to that. So you're going to reduce errors, you're going to streamline your workflows, and you're going to obviously, hopefully, reduce risk and increase your ROI. We also make it really easy for the patient. So you're going to have a credit card on file. Now, those of you in the elective space, cosmetic space, you know how important it is to have that credit card on file. Those patients like to call you and say, hey, can you send me that cleanser? I'm out. Or think about COVID. This was one of the few things that was actually helpful for practices that were closed, where they could auto ship or they could actually, ship product to clients because they already had that information on file. Coming soon, and this is an exciting announcement, we're going to have an online store. So those of you online, hold back here. Now this is a revolution. This is so exciting. We're going to be able to process orders online for products. You'll be able to set up recurring auto ship. So exciting, very, very soon. So watch for that release. But you'll need to be set up on the integrated credit card processing because it's all going to work together. And then think about, how do we make it easier for patients? Well, they like flexibility. I mean, think about it. We all use Amazon. We get online, order something, and we get it the next day. So people want to get online. They want to shop. I mean, look at how online scheduling took off. Those of you that haven't incorporated something like that, I use it all the time. I forget to schedule something. I get online at night. It's an easy way for me to get caught up. We get busy during the day. This lets your patients just stay up with what they need. They can book appointments, they can set up installment payments, they can actually purchase things. So flexibility is key, and not keeping them contained to that 9 to 5 hour, but also think about that flexibility also just cut down on one more phone call into your practice. All right, so we've seen how we make it easy. Let's think about security for a moment. Security is not just, having security within your software. There's some things that you want to make sure are in place with respect to your integrated systems. So PCI compliance. PCI compliance, or the payment card industry, that's what PCI stands for, is really about providing guidelines that merchants need to follow in order to really secure sensitive data. That means that you shouldn't be writing down credit cards on, pieces of paper. You shouldn't be entering them into the patient notes tab so that you have them as reference. You really should be using an integrated system that's got PCI compliance. Now, beyond that, you want to make sure that the data is protected. So you want encryption and you want tokenization. So remember, tokenization means that the patient's data doesn't even touch your server. More importantly, it's encrypted before it's even stored on the database servers. So it's a built-in safety. So saying you've got their credit card on file is really not necessarily what we want to say. We want to say we've got the last 4 digits, but we don't store that. It's all secure. It's encrypted. And then finally, you want someone that's going to have your back. So transaction monitoring. So you want someone that's not only going to help you with external fraud, but you want internal fraud monitoring. So yes, we've talked about it. We're going to talk about it some more. Fraud is a problem, and I've seen it in so many ways in practices. People get very creative when they're desperate. And so you want someone that's going to basically monitor that on an ongoing process and then help you see where you might be at risk. So these are things you need to make sure that you're looking for when you're looking for an integrated, secure solution. All right, and then finally, my favorite, data and analytics. Everybody knows how much data is important. Understanding what that data is will help you realize opportunities, recognize risk, and help you secure your future. So we want to be able to get the reporting, and that's just another element of having an integrated system. So all of these things are part of looking at efficiencies. And so now let's talk about fraud. I'm going to turn it back over to Michelle, and she's going to give us a little bit more and close it out here.
Thanks, Robin. So avoiding fraud. There are some latest fraud incidents here on the screen you guys are seeing that have happened just in lieu of COVID that we should all be aware of. I mean, we're always hearing about it. It's always in the media. It's always online telling us about it, but things to really be aware of that can help protect us against any kind of incidents. So we have the COVID and the charity ones, hotspots, sign-up scans, the contact tracer. I know for a fact my neighbors actually had a contact tracer contact them to sign up for something in lieu of COVID and try to get their personal information. Luckily, my neighbor researched the place that was calling and stuff and found out it was fraudulent. So they didn't give them any information. But these are things to just really be aware of. So what are some types of credit card fraud? There's identity theft. We're all familiar with that. Counterfeit cards, account takeovers, takeovers from the merchants, hacking, phishing, chargebacks, all things that every day our patients are worried about, concerned about, trying to figure out ways to not have that stuff. So security is always going to be key, and them knowing, especially when, like Robin was mentioning with the payment profiles, making sure that everything is secure for them so we can confidently let them know that they are being protected at the end of the day. Outsider fraud, this is one that scares all of us all the time, but this is really important for all of us to be aware of, that we just want to make sure security is key here and that we're making sure everything is protective, that our systems and our hardware are all protected, and that we are staying secure and keeping all that protected for our patients. Internal fraud, we also call it friendly fraud. This is what I feel, as coming from practice management, was always the one I was worried about most, and the one that always surfaced the most, I think, inside some of my practices. And that is basically our staff is doing the fraud. So I know Robin mentioned in the beginning, we have many, 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 many stories. I will share with you just one, but it's a pretty scary one. Office grown and opened up a brand new office, and in the interim of moving into their brand new office manager decides, you know what, girls, we don't need the credit card machines out front. You just put it inside the system manually, and I'll run the cards back in my office. Maintain that patient experience. All cash, just put it in envelopes and I will reconcile at the end of the day. Flash forward a year and a half later, I go on site for a visit. Doctor is just really, really concerned at the bleed out of money. He has another office in another country, doesn't use Nextech for that, just the one in the States here. However, this office manager knew about the EFTs that gets transferred over to their American accounts and would manage what was always coming through those EFTs. And long and behold, she was able to calculate exactly how much cash she could take. So that way she controlled the reports that went to the bookkeeper. Even the bookkeeper didn't have access to any reports to dial in themselves. So she always made it look like they were balancing on paper. The reality is, $500,000 later, he was out of cash, because she would manipulate the credit card amounts to match the cash she would take. So these are just things to think about. And I know when we look at our staff, we're like, that could never happen here. They're so amazing, and they are. I go on site and I meet the most amazing people. But the scary thing is, people, things happen, things change in their lives, or, this particular person just saw reports of what the practice was doing and got a little greedy. So when it comes to security and stuff, it's really important, even with our staff, to maintain this integrity and have things locked down. And permissions doesn't mean that we always are saying we don't trust you. Permissions, sometimes I always try to spin it in the positive. It means we're just trying to make sure you do the best thing the right way consistently. And sometimes when they hear that, they kind of warm up to it a little bit better. So how can you avoid fraud in your practice? So I know Robin's mentioned it, I did a little bit too, is we need to avoid any type of credit card being written down nowhere inside a note field or text box or stick-em notes. Those are even scarier. Should anyone be writing down or storing anyone's credit card information? That's the easiest one. Controlling user access, as we were just saying, they don't have access to these full credit card numbers inside the system. It's something that's held securely with the merchant. So it protects the patient, protects your staff from even having that curiosity, and create processes. We want to make sure that they use the system, they use those credit card scanners as I just gave in my example. We want to make sure they're doing the right thing and they have the right devices and secure devices to make everything successful and protected. So securing your practice, credit card systems against any kind of fraud. One, you want to use secure payment pages. You know, sometimes people will build payment options on their own personal or um, practice website. We want to make sure that you're using secure ones, and sometimes those aren't as secure, so something to think about moving forward. Make sure you're using EMV terminals and avoid standalone that allow blind credits to happen. Robin talked about the tokens, using that kind of system, point-to-point encryption. So again, the biggest thing I can think of too is to revisit those permissions. We can get all these things in place, your encryption, your right devices, but if we're giving people too many permissions, you're still having that open door of fraudulent activity. So we really want to make sure that you can be an admin without being a full-on access admin. So we just want to make sure that things are in play right to help protect the patients and your financials. So again, to wrap up, you know, avoiding fraud, latest fraud incidents, the types of frauds, how to avoid it. These are all great tools that we've given you to really take back to your practices and think about, like, do a 5-10 minute assessment of your current practice situation. Think about, okay, what do I have in place? Maybe I should investigate my terminals or how things are going on. Do I have an integrated credit card processing system? Maybe I don't, and there's a lot of errors happening. They're running it on a machine, they're manually putting it into Nextech. Those kind of things can be eliminated with a lot of these key things that we brought about today. So I would say the biggest take back is to really kind of do an analysis of your current workflow situation for these practices and see what we can improve upon. And for that, I'll turn it over to Robin.
Thanks, Michelle. So, today we covered 3 areas: key industry drivers, and we looked at how internally we can manage our payments better. And then obviously we looked at fraud. And so with that, just a quick takeaway. So yes, I did speak about Nextech Payments. It is available. They do have a special offer for you. So you can reach out to your client success manager or your ISM and get more information on that. So those things are available today. That the future things I talked about, they can also give you some feedback on that. But I think this is a great opportunity for you to kind of assess your business, your go forward, and your plan for protection.